So, with Easter just being around the corner, my favourite time of year, I thought today would be a good time to talk about the Dawn Goddess. So, what's the Dawn Goddess got to do with Easter? Well, the Dawn Goddess of the early Indo Europeans wasn't just the Dawn Goddess. She was also the goddess of spring. That's for obvious reasons, as the springtime is the time where everything really starts to take off. And for some, it may be seen as a dawning of a new year. So who is this Dawn Goddess? Well, she has many different names in the different parts throughout Europe. The Greeks called her Eos and the Romans called her Aurora. In the Germanic world, she was known as Ostara. And we have a very similar name given to us by the Saxon English. Or in Old English, she was known as Eostre or Eostre. And it's from the name of this goddess Eostre, that we get the name Easter. So the name we have for this goddess in Britain then is Eostre or Eostre. But she was a goddess of the Saxons, and so that's pretty late in the piece, around about the 5th or 6th century. So was there not an earlier Celtic Brythonic goddess of the dawn then? Well, actually, there was. All of these personifications of a dawn goddess had their roots back in a much older culture. And this older culture was the common ancestor for all of the Indo Europeans. Now, they came from Central Europe in an area known today as the Pontic-Caspian steppe. And they spread out across Europe, bringing their beliefs and their culture with them. And these people have been named by modern-day scholars as the Proto Indo Europeans. Now, I said that they brought their beliefs with them, but this is such an old culture. The question really begs, as how do we know what their beliefs were? Well, due to the linguistic and thematic mythological commonalities, we can prove that there was a common culture that spawned all of these individual but related cultures across Europe. And so this is the accepted science of today. And if you want to know more about this, the beliefs of the Proto-Indo-Europeans, then I'll put a link to a video I did just a few weeks back there somewhere. So all of these dawn goddesses that I've spoken about have their roots right back with the Proto-Indo-Europeans. And so from the common linguistic and thematic commonalities amongst these cultures, we've been able to identify that the Proto-Indo-Europeans had a dawn goddess who was called Husos. So we've identified this concept of a dawn goddess is very old indeed, but I ask the question again, the same question. Was there a Celtic Brythonic goddess of the dawn? Well, clearly logic would dictate that as the Celts were part of this Indo-European family, then they must have. But who was she? Well, there are some clues. And those clues all point back to the Irish goddess, Bridget, whose name may be translated to the exalted or the high one. So what does this have to do with the dawn goddess? Well, it's thought that the name actually refers to the goddess's connection with sunlight and fire. And it's also interesting to note that high is an epithet for the Vedic goddess of the dawn, Usha. The festival associated with Bridget is Imbolc, and Imbolc is celebrated on the 1st of February, and she is a goddess of the spring. So that's the Irish goddess, the Irish spring goddess, that is the most likely candidate to be the goddess of the dawn. But Bridget is thought by many to be the same goddess that was venerated, historically venerated, right throughout Britain and continental Europe. And that goddess was known as Brigantia. And we currently have 8 known inscriptions to Brigantia in Britain. And I'll put some up here on the screen for you to see. And so it is the Irish spring goddess Bridget, also known as Bridget and Latinized by the Romans as Brigantia, that is our best candidate for the Brythonic dawn goddess. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I'll see you again in another 2 weeks on the next one.